really an important mission, and that's something that we can all come together on. And oftentimes the county executive and the president of the council are aligned, which is really great when you're voting. There have been times in that situation, in fact, where we have been impactful at MACo, being able to, support a mission that's really important. So those things are important down in Annapolis, and I think that it's critical to be able to, have someone pick up the phone. And oftentimes those legislators are much more keen on being able to talk to one or two people, the county executive and the council president, rather than 5 or 7 commissioners, which it can be very hectic down in the state legislature, and we recognize that. But to hear, from those 2 representatives is a lot easier.
Thank you. And Mr. Weldon, what are your thoughts on this?
So first, let me tell you how proud I am of the voters of Wacomico County for turning out for this event tonight. Whether you are decided on this question, or you come here tonight with an open mind, the fact that you've come here is the thing that matters most. So I drove 3 hours. Mrs. Weldon and I drove 3 hours. I was really hoping for a full room. I'm thrilled to see a full room. It made that drive seem totally worthwhile. So from my perspective, when it comes to the General Assembly, I served 8 years representing Southern Frederick County and Southeastern Washington County in the Maryland House of Delegates. If you have a strong legislative delegation from Wacomico County, it won't matter as much in the General Assembly what your county form and structure of government is, but it will matter. It does matter with the administration, the office of the governor, and the executive branch of the state government. So if you've got a great legislative delegation, your senators and your delegates, and I know one of your senators really well, I will tell you that they can navigate whatever obstructions get in the way in the legislative process. But when it comes to having influence with the Moore administration and cabinet secretaries and infrastructure questions, having a decider in the office of county executive absolutely makes a difference.
Thank you. So our next question is coming from Bill Chambers. Go ahead, Mr. Chambers.
Thank you to the panelists tonight for joining us. Panelists, on the current form of government, what checks and balances do you think exist, and how would that change under the proposed system?
We'll start with Madam Executive Kornberger.
So this change, I don't know that it's exactly a change in the system per se. I look at it as you're essentially removing the power from all of the voters in the county, right? Because all of the voters are voting for who is leading this county. So you're going to remove that power from the voters and now hand it over to 7 voters. Is there 7? Can I ask? Yep. So we have 5 in my county, but 7 commissioners. And essentially those 7 commissioners would then be handing over the power to a county administrator who is not elected by the people. And that's really my concern and my viewpoint on why that's a problem, is because the county administrator is not elected duly by the people. They're appointed. So now you have a situation where the power is essentially removed from the people and the voters. The whole process, this this executive with the legislature, the checks and balances, that is the best system that we have. That's why our nation uses it. That's why we have a president, in my opinion, a president and, our legislature. Every state uses it. It's the best form that we have come up with so far. It's not perfect, but it's the best form we've come up with so far. So, to go backwards in that seems odd to me.
Thank you. I want to go to Mr. Bennett, because you are a county administrator currently, so what is your perspective on this question?
No, I agree fully. When you get the commissioner council form of government, you have positions like I have in Worcester where I am not elected by the people. So if the people have an issue with me in Worcester County, they need 4 votes to get rid of me. Now, hopefully I'm doing a good enough job that never comes to pass, but with the wrong individual, 4 votes. Now, if you're not happy with the county executive, every 4 years you can vote for somebody new. So you have that. But specifically to the question in terms of checks and balances, currently council can cut the budget. There may have been some changes since I left, but the council can always cut a program they don't like or reduce a funding if they don't like what the current executive is doing with that money. And then they also have say over the certain leadership positions like department heads. Every 4 years, the executive will want to put somebody forward and they have to be confirmed by council. So if they're not happy with how that department's being run, they could replace that department head. So as it stands, they do have some checks and balances. Could it be improved with charter changes? Sure. But they do have some. With the proposed system, like Madam Executive was saying, it takes 4 votes to change things. And if you're not happy with those 4 individuals, you really need to replace 4 folks on the council to get that change you want to see in your government. So either vote out 1 person or try to vote out 4. And I can tell you which one I think is easier.
Thank you. Mr. Holden.
So I'm a storyteller. I'm going to warn you right up front. I'm a storyteller. So I'm going to turn your clocks back to the year 1999. I was serving on a 5-member board of county commissioners in Frederick County, Maryland. We were in our Thursday morning work session, which was typically a 4-hour public meeting. Back then it was televised, but not with the sophistication we do now. My 4 colleagues and I spent 2 hours arguing over a $2,500 copier purchase. Now, we employed a county manager who made the presentation, but that person, human nature being what it was very careful to not ever upset the 5 county commissioners. So literally, this argument went on for 2 hours until I sat at my spot on the dais and added up the hourly wage rate of every county employee sitting in the room, because the seating area wasn't filled with the public, because nobody wanted to watch these 5 knuckleheads argue for 3 hours over things like copier purchases. But senior county employees of every division were sitting in the audience. So I added up their wage rate, hourly wage rate, and then interjected myself in the argument when I'd had enough. And I said this, and this is on tape, you can watch this. We could have bought 4 copiers on the back of the wage rate of the senior employees sitting out there in that room. This is insanity. No one is accountable. Not to the voters, not to good operational process, not to good management and leadership practices, and you can't blame the county manager or the county administrator, because their job would be on the line if they picked wrong, chose wrong, and ended up alienating a voting majority of the elected county commissioners. So look, I'm a big believer in accountability. And I feel like in our county, since we implemented the charter form, there is a person in our county. Her name is Jessica Fitzwater. And she will be held to account in a year and a half or 2 years when she's up for reelection, where our 7 county council members, 5 of whom are elected by District 2 at large, are accountable to their district, not except those 2 at the voting base in the county at large.
Thank you. Let's go to the right panel for the next question.
Thank you, and thank you to all of our panelists. We're honored to have you here. Little small world story before my question. I just met Mr. Weldon this evening. His uncle, Kurt, was a member of Congress for 20 years, serving
Too long, actually, too long, ladies and gentlemen.
serving suburban Philadelphia. And in 1992, my uncle ran against his uncle for the seat in Congress. My uncle was defeated soundly, but I just learned that. So it's nice to make that small world.
Never forget.
Back to the question.
I like that. Too long.
So, how do you think the citizens of Wicomico will be impacted in their day-to-day lives with a change in the way the county is led?
Let's start with Mr. Weldon.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can sit here with a straight face and tell a single Wicomico County citizen that their lives would be better or worse with a change in the form and structure of government. So I've been a city administrator. I was the chief operations officer of the city of Frederick, Maryland's 2nd largest municipality, and a county commissioner and a state delegate. And people who do what my colleague on this panel does in terms of operating a county government as a professional administrator are fantastic at what they do. They are outstanding at what they do. So I don't think I would tell anybody here, you'll be better or you'll be worse. It's a choice you make. It's a choice you're faced with in less than a month. I think I can come up with reasons why I would argue one way or the other, but to sit here and tell you your life will be better or worse, I feel like that's a stretch.
Thank you. Madam Executive, we're going to you next.
You're gonna get the same from me. It's very hard to sit here and tell you your day to day would be different, would be impacted. But it's really about looking at how effective one may be, and in my opinion, when you have a larger county and you've gotten to this point, you have great things like this great university and quality health care and all of these things in your county. It's not a small county. So those things, to me, matter, and they're why you've gotten to a charter form of government. However, is it going to change your day-to-day? I can't sit here and tell you that with a straight face.
Thank you. And Mr. Young.
Yeah, I agree. I think day to day, the short term, you're not going to see anything noticeable. I think it's over the long run that you have, you could have something stable as an administrator, and if you're happy with that, that can last and take you somewhere. But with the executive form, again, you have that option. Every 4 years, you can try to change the trajectory if you think you're heading some way. So if you're pretty consistent, like I try to be, you're gonna know my fingerprints should be all over Worcester as long as they'll have me, and hopefully that's a good thing. But with the executive, it's every 4 years. You can consider changing, and that's it's for the people to decide what the trajectory is. And if you like it, keep it. If you don't like it, we won't.
Thank you. Okay, our next question, we're going to go back to Josh.
In what ways, if any, would the county budget be impacted by having to undertake a search for and salary of a county administrator instead of an elected county executive?
Thank you. We will start with Madam Executive.
So, this one too, I'm not sure there's a huge impact as far as the search for, and how much that would cost you. But I would say, folks, aren't a ton of them. They're actually, I think, do you know if this is been a topic at Mako, to try and get a tract, for a pathway, if you will, to get people into this profession? Because I believe it's been discussed in that, you know, there's not really a pathway at this time, so there's not a ton of runway after, you know, you leave that spot either. So the question is, where do you find these people? Because you do have to know a lot, you have to really understand a lot to be able to run a county effectively and efficiently, and to be the full-time person doing that, without a county executive at the helm. It's really you, and then that board of directors, if you will, that are the part-time commissioners. So, you know, circling back, I'm not sure how much financially that's really going to get you in deep water, but I will say it's the struggle is real.
Thank you. Mr. Young, we'll go to you next.
Okay. I don't know what the final form will be. You know, there's a proposed administrator. Will there be a deputy? Will there be 2 deputies? What will that staff look like? The way it is now is the executive has a director of administration and a deputy. Council has a council administrator. Hypothetically, if you got rid of those 3 positions and the county executive salary, you could end up with a savings. But I don't know what other positions are needed. You know, I can tell you from when I worked for Executive Bob Culver, there were days where I was at a meeting, usually I got the short straw, but Director of Administration Wayne Strasberg was at another meeting, and County Executive Bob Culver was at another meeting. And literally, we didn't have to circle up and be like, what was your meeting about? I'll tell you about mine, and so forth. So there's a lot of work that the county gets pulled into. And I don't know what the actual answer is. It could be budget neutral, it could be a savings, it could cost more depending on how this office gets formed.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, don't know.
Mr. Weldon, what are your thoughts?
So if you'll forgive a colloquialism, if I said that right, this argument is rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. It probably wouldn't make a difference. So that's not the question I think you great Wacomico County voters should ask yourself. The question you should ask yourself is actually buried in the question that we were asked. Appointed or elected?
Yep.
That is your choice. Appointed or elected.
Right.
And you get to make the choice for whatever motivation drives you to the ballot box. But that, not, or you have to pay an administrator more because they're better qualified as a function of their education and past experience. I literally think that's just rearranging deck chairs. The bigger question that you must ask yourself is appointed or elected, which is more accountable to voters.
Thank you. Our next question is going to come from Bill Chambers.
Thank you. This will be the last question for all of you. We'll do some individual questions, and some of this has already been answered, but maybe you can expound on it. Panelists, do you believe that both a county executive form of government and a council-only form of government can be effective? Why or why not?
Mr. Young, we'll start with you.
I think they both can be effective. I do think as counties get larger and you have more citizens to respond to, and as you have more services you're offering, just more to manage, the part-time nature of a council or commissioner gets a little unwieldy, and you really need that full-time position. If you look at the larger counties out there by population or by budget, they are county executive form of government. The 2 outliers, when you kind of stack them that way, tend to be Cecil and Wacomico. You can look at that as, you know, jumping the gun. You can also look at it as it's at some point you have to transition transition from council or commissioner to executive is at least how it seems to be working in the state of Maryland. So, yeah, I think they both can be effective. It's just, it gets out of hand, and if you have adequate staff, you know, you can handle just about everything. And like the example I gave before, working for the county executive, it's all hands on deck. In Worcester, we have about half the population of Wycomico. It's a bit more manageable. So, yeah, I think they both can be effective. It's just when you go larger, you can see across the state, the executive form is the way to go, apparently.
Thank you. Mr. Weldon, what are your thoughts?
I think effective is a judgment call a voter makes, not an opinion writer, not an editorial writer, but a voter makes a judgment on what is effective. Weston's absolutely right. Both forms of government can be, have been, are being effective. So effective is your decision, your choice, based on what you see happen at county meetings, what you see in your interactions with county government. The question about effectiveness is a judgment call a voter should make, not some guy who just drove 3 hours so he feels like a subject matter expert. I would say yes, both forms of government can be effective, have been effective, and are being effective right now.
Thank you.
Great answer.
And finally, Madam Executive.
So yeah, I would agree with both of these gentlemen, who are certainly subject matter. Yeah, you are. You've been around. I'm the least up here, but I'm still up here, and I still certainly have my opinion and my experience, and from my experience in my position, I would say that, you know, I tend to ask the question of myself, of my team, are we being as effective or most efficient in anything that we do? And so, you know, is it working? Yes, it is working. We have some counties that are 15, 20, 30,000 people, and that commissioner form of government seems to be working well. Some counties don't even have a planning and zoning at all in their county. They have it in their municipalities, for example, but not in county government. It's different. That's not what you have here. That's not what I have in my county. We're a population of over 100,000, and you know, that transition that Weston spoke of, like, that happens. So once that happens, it would seem strange to revert back, and that would be a decision that you have to make as the voters yourselves. But you know, again, it's what is most effective and most efficient, and for a larger county of 100,000 with all the moving parts. And again, this is what's used at the national level. This is what's used in our states, because it is effective once you start to get larger and have all these moving parts and pieces. And it is great for accountability, because every 4 years, the voters get to come back and vote again.
Amen.
All right, our next question, we're going to go now to the individual questions.